Israeli military kills 3 World Central Kitchen workers. 8 arrested after explosion hits Kosovo Canal. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. I'm Jessica Lee and you're watching World Today. The Israeli military has killed 3 workers with the World Central Kitchen, WCK, and at least 2 other people in an airstrike on a vehicle in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza, in what was the 3rd deadly attack on the aid group this year. The US-based charity, which runs community kitchens in Gaza, said it had paused its operations in Gaza after the attack on Saturday. The Israeli occupation forces claimed that it was targeting a terrorist who was employed by the WCK. However, the WCK said it had no knowledge that any individual in the vehicle had alleged ties with any terrorist group. Earlier on Saturday, Palestinian civil defense spokesperson Mahmoud Bassal told news agencies that the bodies of at least 5 dead were transported to hospital, including 3 employees of the World Central Kitchen following the attack. Bassal confirmed that all 3 men worked for WCK and they were hit while driving in a WCK 4-wheel drive vehicle in Khan Yunis, adding that the vehicle had been marked with its logo clearly visible. The Israeli army did not mention the other victims of the attack or its effect on getting food to the starving population of Gaza, who rely on the Washington-based charity services. Meanwhile, at least 45 Palestinians are killed in Israeli attacks across Gaza since dawn, including 12 people bombed while waiting for food aid in southern Khan Yunis city as hunger and desperation spread. Israel said it had been targeting a Hamas gunman in that strike, but the military admitted a series of grave mistakes and violations of its own rules of engagement. Antoine Renaud, the World Food Programme WFP Palestine representative, said that 8 organizations face extreme difficulties in delivering basic goods in Gaza. Renaud said these organizations have been facing clear shortages of the assistance they were supposed to provide, adding that in November they have only been able to reach 815,000 people. He said the vast majority of these have received only 1/3 of the rations they are supposed to receive. At least 44,000 people have been killed in more than 13 months of the war on Gaza, according to the Enclave's health ministry, which said on Saturday that at least 105,150 more have been wounded and thousands remain missing. Kosovo's Interior Minister Shalal Svekla revealed on Saturday that police had arrested 8 people after an explosion hit a canal that sends water to its 2 main power plants, an incident Pristina labelled a terrorist act by neighbouring Serbia. Serbia's President Alexander Vučić denied what he said were baseless accusations about Belgrade's involvement in the incident, which occurred around 7 p.m. local time on Friday. Police Commander Gezmen Hogza said those arrested are suspected of inciting, organizing and even executing these recent terrorist attacks, and in particular the one in the canal of Ibir Lepeng. Hogza said an initial investigation had shown that between 15 and 20 kilos of explosives were used in the attack. He also said that police raided 10 locations, confiscating more than 200 military uniforms, 6 shoulder-fired rocket launchers, long weapons, pistols and ammunition. Police said most of the people arrested belonged to local Serb organization Civilna Zaštita Civil Protection, which the government in Kosovo has declared as a terrorist organization. The explosion has also increased tensions between the 2 Balkan countries. United States President-elect Donald Trump said on Saturday that he discussed the border, trade and energy in a meeting with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, which he described as very productive amid fears of a trade war. Upon his departure, Trudeau also said his conversation with Trump was excellent. Trudeau paid an unannounced visit to Florida on Friday evening and had dinner with Trump at his Mar-a-Lago residence, days after Republican Trump pledged to impose 25% tariffs on Canadian and Mexican imports after he is sworn in as president in January. Now, that pledge has raised fears of a trade war between U.S. and two of his biggest trading partners. Mexico President Claudia Sheinbaum warned this week that Trump's tariff plan would have dire consequences for both countries and suggested possible retaliation. Now, Trump wants to use tariffs as a tool to get Mexico and Canada to help stem the flow of illegal drugs into the U.S., particularly the deadly opioid fentanyl, and also migrants crossing illegally into the United States. In another development, United States President-elect Donald Trump on Saturday demanded that BRICS member countries commit to not creating a new currency or supporting another currency that would replace the United States dollar or face 100% tariffs. Now, the statement comes after a BRICS summit held last month in Kazan, Russia, where the countries discussed boosting non-dollar transactions and strengthening local currencies. Trump wrote on his Truth Social website warning about a threat that refers to the grouping that includes Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and others. Now, Trump has vowed to pursue a protectionist agenda, threatening hefty tariffs on neighbors and rivals. If BRICS countries continue with their plans, Trump warned they should expect to say goodbye to selling to the wonderful U.S. economy. He wrote, now, the BRICS group has expanded significantly since its inception in 2009 and now includes countries such as Malaysia as a partner country, Iran, Egypt, and the United Arab Emirates. Now, Australia's Prime Minister said today that he was ready to engage with billionaire ex-owner Elon Musk over his criticism of the government's ban on those under the age of 16 from joining social media. Anthony Albanese hailed Parliament's Thursday's passage of landmark legislation requiring social media firms to take reasonable steps to prevent young teens from having accounts. The law, which will come into effect after 12 months, gives few details of how it will be enforced, including how sites like Facebook, Instagram, and X will verify users' ages. Musk, who has been named Donald Trump's government efficiency chief in the incoming U.S. administration, posted on X last month that the law seems like a backdoor way to control access to the internet by all Australians. Social media firms that fail to comply with the new law face fines of up to 50 million Australian dollars, equivalent to about 32.5 million US dollars for systemic breaches. Albanese said the government will decide over the next 12 months how to implement the ban, insisting, however, that it would not require people to provide identification. The China Council for the Promotion of International Trade said the second China International Supply Chain Expo that concluded on Saturday amassed over 210 trade deals and tentative agreements signed, totaling more than 21.17 billion US dollars. Now, the organizers said throughout the 5-day expo, more than 600 exhibitors from nearly 70 countries and regions established cooperative ties with over 37,000 upstream and downstream suppliers. This year's expo attracted over 200,000 visitors, both online and offline, an increase of a third compared to the first edition. Now, the event featured 620 domestic and foreign enterprises and institutions from 69 countries, regions, and international organizations with over 1,000 exhibitors. Nearly one-third of this year's exhibitors were from overseas, up from 26% last year. Now, the expo aims to foster greater international consensus on the development of industrial and supply chains. So far, a total of 68 domestic and foreign enterprises and institutions have signed the intention to participate in the third edition of the Expo next year. At least 9 killed after severe floods in Thailand. That and more coming up next. The flooding driven by heavy rains in southern Thailand has killed at least 9 people and displaced more than 13,000, officials said, as rescue teams using boats and jet skis worked to reach stranded residents. Local media footage showed residents wading through murky, chest-deep water and cars submerged in flooded streets. The country's disaster agency said flooding across 8 provinces in southern Thailand has affected 553,921 households and claimed 9 lives, prompting agencies to mobilize urgent assistance. It added that more than 13,000 people had been forced to flee their homes with temporary shelters set up in schools and temples. Residents of coastal Songkhla province also said that they were concerned about the dwindling food supplies. The 2 hospitals in nearby Pattani province suspended operations to prevent floodwaters from damaging medical facilities. The Thai Meteorological Department has warned that very heavy rain could continue to affect some areas of the country's south throughout this week. The government has deployed rescue teams to assist affected residents and designated 50 million baht or $1.7 million in flood relief for each province. New York and several states in the United States experienced heavy snowstorms under a lake effect on Saturday. Now, according to the National Weather Service, lake effect snow occurs when cold air moves across the open waters of the Great Lakes. More than 2 feet of snow blanketed western New York and Pennsylvania, with some parts getting more than 3 feet, as a lake effect snowstorm disrupted post-Thanksgiving travel and stranded dozens of vehicles on highways. The storm threatened to bring up to 6 feet of snow to some areas by Tuesday morning. The National Weather Service said the snowfall was heaviest along Interstate 90, which hugs Lake Erie from Buffalo through Pennsylvania and onto Cleveland. Now, Erie and parts of northern Michigan, eastern Ohio, and western New York received around 30 inches of snow or more. Motorists barred from Interstate 90 wound up stranded on 2-lane highways, and truck owners towed cars out of ditches. Temporary shelters were set up for travelers who were stuck, where a few hundred people took refuge. Ireland's Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister celebrated on Saturday as their parliamentary seats were declared during counting after Friday's general election. Prime Minister and Fine Gael leader Simon Harris was hoisted into the air by supporters at a counting centre in Killincarrig, Wicklow County. His coalition partner, Deputy Prime Minister Michael Martin of Fianna Fáil, celebrated in similar fashion in Cork. Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil were on 20.5% and 21.9% of first preference votes respectively, according to a tally by Virgin Media News, with left-wing Sinn Féin on 19.1%. Now, the 2 centre-right parties look set to be returned to power, but will likely need at least one smaller partner to secure a majority, raising questions over the stability of the next government. A clear outline of final seat numbers was not expected to emerge until Sunday. Georgian President Salom Zurabichvili called the government illegitimate on Saturday and said she would not leave office when her term ends next month, as the Prime Minister declared the state would not allow a revolution to take place. Now, the South Caucasus country was thrown into crisis on Thursday when Prime Minister Irakli Kobakidzey's Georgian Dream Party said it was halting European Union accession talks for the next 4 years over what it called blackmail of Georgia by the bloc, abruptly reversing a long-standing national goal.
ხვალ ჩვენ შევხვდებით კიდევ, ხვალ ჩემთან ერთად იქნებიან ის ადამიანები, რომელიც მე მოვიწვიე და რომელთანაც ერთად ამ პოლიტიკური პროცესის სათავეში ვიქნები, იმიტომ რომ მე ვრჩები როგორც თქვენი პრეზიდენტი, არსებობს ლეგიტიმური პარლამენტი, მაშასადამე ვერ აირჩევს არალეგიტიმური პარლამენტი ახალ პრეზიდენტს, მაშასადამე ინოგურაცია ვერ იქნება და ჩემი მანდატი გრძელდება მანამ სანამ არ იქნება ლეგიტიმურად არჩეული პარლამენტი, რომელიც ლეგიტიმურად აირჩევს ვინც უნდა შემცვალოს მე. მაგრამ მე თქვენთან ვარ და ვიქნები.
In an address on Saturday, Zura Bishvili, a pro-EU critic of Georgian Dream, whose powers are mostly ceremonial, said Parliament had no right to elect her successor when her term ends in December, and that she would stay in post. The decision has also worsened the situation in the country, which saw thousands of pro-European in the Georgian capital Tbilisi late on Saturday to protest against the government, which called off talks to join the European Union. Now, thousands of protesters marched on Saturday against Valencia regional leader Carlos Mazon to demand his resignation for the handling of the deadly floods that killed more than 220 people. Holding banners reading, "All I want for Christmas is Mazon to resign," and chanting "Mazon murderer," protesters marched from Valencia City Hall to the Virgin Square near the regional government headquarters. Protesters also set off their phone alarms and played a similar recording to condemn the Valencia regional government's response to floods. Mazon is bearing the brunt of the anger because his government failed to alert citizens about the floods until it was too late. Now, many people died after being caught off guard by the rapid flooding while driving in ground floor apartments or even while attempting to move their cars from parking lots. It later emerged that he was having a long lunch on the day of the floods and arrived 2 hours late to the emergency meeting. Mazon has admitted he had made errors but refused to resign and said the body responsible for measuring water flows run by the national government failed to send sufficient warnings. According to government figures, an estimated 100,000 people attended the protest. To the coming sports, Las Palmas clinches shock win over Barca to spoil anniversary celebrations. La Liga leaders Barcelona's 125th anniversary celebrations were spoiled by Las Palmas, who claimed a shock 2-1 win on Saturday after Fabio Silva scored the winner to extend the hosts' winless league run to 3 games. Barca remain on 34 points and lead second place Real Madrid by 4, but their rivals now have 2 games in hand, while the victory moved Las Palmas up to 14th place with 15 points. Las Palmas opened scoring early in the second half when Sandro Ramirez scored a sublime goal against his former club, but the home side equalized just after the hour when Rafinha fired a low left-foot shot past ex-Barcelona keeper Jesper Silesen. Las Palmas were not deterred. However, it took the lead once again in the 67th minute as Wolverhampton Wanderers' Loni Silva broke through the offside trap to latch onto a pass from Javi Munoz, outmuscled a defender and pulled the trigger. French duo Karim Benzema and N'Golo Kante helped themselves to goals as Al Ittihad cruised to another Saudi Pro League win with a 4-0 thumping of Al Ettifaq in Dammam on Saturday. Now, the league leaders opened the scoring in the first half thanks to a composed finish from Kante before Benzema, Houssem Aouar and Steven Bergwijn added second-half goals to secure the 3 points. Now, both sides were testing each other out during the first 30 minutes of the match before Kante struck and scored the first goal of the night in the 35th minute. Benzema, who provided an assist for the goal earlier, scored Al Ittihad's second goal, calmly slotting home after capitalizing on a rebound inside the box. Benzema started a goal frenzy that led to a rout as Aouar put his name on the scoreboard in the 66th and Bergwijn with the 4th goal just 4 minutes later. Now, the result heaps more pressure on manager Steven Gerrard, with Al Ettifaq just 3 points outside the relegation zone, having not won in the league for 9 matches. Now, with this victory, Al Ittihad now leads the Saudi Pro League by 5 points, albeit having played 1 game more than second place Al Hilal. Now, the win against a lower table opponent like Al Ettifaq reinforces their title aspirations as Benzema's return boosts the team's attacking firepower. Botafogo beat Atletico Mineiro 3-1 to win their first Copa Libertadores title despite being reduced to 10 men after Gregore was sent off just 30 seconds into the contest at the Monumental Stadium on Saturday. Now, fans barely had a chance to settle into their seats when Gregore was handed his marching orders for a studs-up foul on Fausto Vera, which connected with the side of the player's face. But Botafogo's players did not let that setback get in the way of getting their hands on the trophy. Mineiro tried to make the most of their numerical advantage and went on the attack with Hulk and Daverson up front. However, it was Botafogo that opened the scoreboard through Luis Henrique's goal in the 35th minute, and Alex Tellez' penalty 9 minutes later gave Botafogo a 2-goal cushion. Mineiro got one back shortly after the break when Eduardo Vargas headed home from Hulk's corner. Botafogo defended well, and goalkeeper John kept Mineiro's efforts at bay as Junior Santos put the icing on the cake in added time in an enthralling encounter that gave coach Arthur Jorge's side their first title in a South American competition. MotoGP World Champion Jorge Martin savoured a special visit to his hometown as he celebrated his title in front of fans and local dignitaries on Saturday.
It's been amazing so far. You know, after 6 years, I'm back here as a world champion, but this time as a MotoGP world champion. So it's the, maximum experience, let's say. Here in my town, they are wild. They are, the parade we did was amazing with the Ducati, and now it's time to celebrate with all the town. So I think that the celebration from the moment I won, it's been much better than what I expected. So enjoying a lot the moment. I will have time to be focused on next year, but now it's time to just celebrate and enjoy the moment.
Martin edged 2-time champion Francesco Bagnaia by 10 points to claim his first World Championship crown earlier this month, thanks to a season that saw him claim 32 podiums across sprints and races. Now, the Spaniard returned to San Sebastián de los Reyes to thank his supporters who joined him in a parade of motorbikes before he arrived at City Hall to kick off the celebrations. Martin was joined on the balcony by his family and Alex Espargaro before finishing off his memorable day by signing autographs in the local square. Now, FIFA subcommittee report on Qatar's 2022 World Cup legacy said football's world governing body has a responsibility to compensate migrant workers. But the organization has not acted on a recommendation to do that by using its legacy fund. Now, the report prepared by the FIFA Subcommittee on Human Rights and Social Responsibility looked into a request made at the FIFA Congress by the Norwegian Football Federation, or the NFF, who asked what steps FIFA might take to compensate workers. FIFA launched a $50 million legacy fund this week for social programs, but was criticized by Amnesty International for not doing anything for families of migrant workers who died or were exploited when building Qatar's stadiums for the World Cup. The Middle Eastern country has denied that workers were exploited. Now, the report stated many human rights impacts occurred in Qatar from 2010 to 2022 for workers, including deaths, injuries, wages not being paid for months, and debt faced by workers and their families reimbursing fees they paid to obtain jobs. At the World Cup in Doha, FIFA President Gianni Infantino said the Workers' Support and Insurance Fund had provided compensation of more than $350 million to workers in cases mainly related to non-payment of wages. Now, Amnesty and other rights groups had led calls for FIFA to compensate migrant workers for human rights abuses by setting aside $440 million, matching the World Cup prize money. From 30 years of PlayStation to Thanksgiving parade balloons, chill out and enjoy this week's Offbeat Stories selection. Japanese electronics giant Sony is set to celebrate 30 years since it launched the PlayStation console, the little grey box that catapulted the firm into the gaming big league. Now, PlayStation was Sony's first foray into the world of video games, and when it hit the shelves in Japan on the 3rd of December 1994, the company needed to sell 1 million units to cover its costs. In the end, the gadget became a legend, selling more than 102 million units, helping to launch many of the industry's best-loved franchises and positioning Sony as a heavyweight in a hugely lucrative sector. One of the keys to its success was broadening the appeal of a pastime that had often been dismissed as a hobby for children. Now, from the off, the firm was clear that it wanted to trash this image. In part, this stems from Sony's rivalry with Nintendo, which was already a dominant player in the sector by the mid-1990s, but whose games skewed the young. The original PlayStation can trace its history to a falling out between the two great Japanese firms. They had partnered in the late 1980s to develop a version of the Super Nintendo console with an inbuilt CD player. But Nintendo suspected Sony were using the project as a way to muscle into the gaming sector and abruptly cancelled the partnership in 1991. Now, Sony, who found itself in a humiliating position, pushed ahead with the project by itself. The hardware proved to be revolutionary, CD-ROMs being cheaper and storing much more data than the cartridges used by Nintendo and other consoles. The PS2, meanwhile, is still the most successful console in history, having sold more than 160 million units. Monkey D. Luffy, Gold Bear, and other balloons came to life on Wednesday in Manhattan ahead of Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade on Thursday. Hundreds of spectators watched as workers blew helium into 17 character balloons, 22 floats, and 15 heritage and novelty balloons. The first Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade took place a century ago in 1924. But this year's parade is actually the 98th edition since the parade was cancelled during World War II. Now, long before the parade marches its way through Manhattan, prep work takes place in a massive warehouse in New Jersey known as the Macy's Studio. There were 26 floats this year, including one with a fire-breathing dragon. However, the floats weren't the star of Macy's Thanksgiving show. The Macy's parade is best known for its giant cartoon character balloons. 17 of these balloons floated above the streets of Manhattan this year, including balloons depicting Spider-Man, Dora the Explorer, and Minnie Mouse. And that wraps up World Today this time around. In our top story, Israeli military kills 3 World Central Kitchen workers. I'm Jessica Lee, Malaysia Madani. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Thank you for watching.